Let's hope you're right, Steve. And if not, nothing else. It looks like as I said, we're going to get a kickoff. There's not much going on in the world, by the way, right now. I mean, we're doing this on a Thursday, and we're just coming off the boycotts of that I guess is going to be called off, and just so much happening in sports and in the world. We're going to try to put at least the world's problems on the shelf for the next 40, 45 minutes or so. For those of you watching this on tape later at the website at Pointspreads.ca, hopefully. Those of you who watch this, if you don't want to watch the full 45 minutes and you wonder about a certain team, what we're going to do in the next, again, 45 minutes or so is to go through all the teams alphabetically. So, for example, if you're looking at the New York Jets or something, you may want to go about midway into this if you just want to get a short snippet. So, again, here we go. We're going to start alphabetically at the top. I'm going to give my opinion if I have one, and then Steve, of course, the expert who's won the Superbook contest 2 years, the only person ever to do that. Certainly an authority in sports is going to give you, and he does all his homework too, no question about that. So Steve, let's start with the Arizona Cardinals, who have a win total at spreads.ca, where you can bet this. Spreads.ca has it at 7.5. In other words, they're expecting just under a 500 season for the Arizona Cardinals. What do you think?
Yeah, I would look over the 7.5. Kyler Murray certainly developed as the season went on. I have him rated right in the middle as my quarterbacks. The fact that they pick up Hopkins, and frankly, I was worried about their wide receivers, young wide receiver in Kirk, certainly should improve, but their aging veteran wide receiver is finally, I think, going to slow down. So bringing Hopkins in, I think, is a big plus. I think in terms of a prop bet, Murray over, I think it's 4,050 pass yards. Sure looks good to me. The fact is Arizona still has a bad defense, even though they have upgraded it slightly, but they should be throwing. And Kingsbury now is the wide receivers that he can do more of the four wide receiver sets that he really likes to do. So Murray over 4,050 yards, probably my best bet.
Wow. Well, that surprises me a little bit. I didn't expect to hear an over from Fezzik on the Cardinals. That's one of the most exciting teams, I think, from last year and going into this season. Real quick on the Cards, the only problem is they play in a brutal division. You've got two bona fide Super Bowl contenders with the Seahawks and the 49ers, and arguably the Rams just coming off a Super Bowl 2 seasons ago. So in any other division, that might be a championship contender for at least the division. But in this division, who knows? Let's move on down to the Atlanta Falcons. This is a NFC South team playing in a transition division. We have the Tampa Bay, Atlanta, New Orleans, and of course, as I said, the Atlanta Falcons. Also 7.5. Surprisingly high, a little bit high. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, and I think it's right about where it should be. By the way, I'm doing a lot of this from memory, so if I misspeak one stat or the like, bear with me. Falcons, you have to answer the question, which Falcons are we looking at? Falcons offensively are going to be fine. Defensively, absolutely horrendous to start the year. Started 1-7. Defense was pretty good second half of the year. Well, what happened during the bye week? Quinn was calling all the plays defensively. Wasn't working. He said, all right, you guys go ahead and figure it out. And he had Raheem Morris, who at the time was an offensive guy, and he called some of the defensive plays. Some other coaches did as well. Well, Raheem Morris went ahead and got promoted based upon how well he did, and he's now the defensive coordinator. If you believe what you saw the second half of the year, you're going to like Atlanta over, because certainly with Matty Ryan, they're going to put up points. If you think it's an aberration, you want to go under. You know what? All things being equal, I know I've read on sites like Football Outsiders and the like that the second half is maybe no more predictive than the first half. But in this case, I think there was a fundamental change, and I do think that defense will be better. I'll lean over.
Wow, okay. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens. Certainly a Super Bowl contender. One of the highest totals on the board at spreads.ca and elsewhere. We're seeing an 11.5. 11.5 wins. They're expecting either 11-5 or a 12-4 season for the very exciting multi-dimensional Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, and the question is that running attack for Baltimore, how effective can it be long-term when teams get to see it over and over again? Because Baltimore is running an offense, frankly, that no one else is running, and it would make sense that the NFL would catch up to it. However, in a COVID year, I could argue, I think a lot of these high-flying passing offenses are going to suffer in September because the timing is so critical, hard to get that timing right. I think a running attack is so much easier to get your bearings early, and Baltimore is just loaded with ball carriers. And frankly, they were so dominant the last 8 weeks of the season. I think they went 8-0 straight up and against the spread. That Tennessee loss was shocking in the playoffs. Even Baltimore says, hey, we looked past them. I know they laid an egg with Lamar Jackson against the Chargers the year before in the playoffs. Maybe this team is built more for the regular season. 11 to 11.5. Obviously, they had to cut their safety. Little money has come in against Baltimore. I'm not sure I agree with that. I'm going to pass. I do want to mention, why are we only talking about season wins? Why aren't we talking about division? Why aren't we talking about Baltimore plus 550 to win the Super Bowl? And the reason is that dastardly bookie takes so much vig on those divisional bets and on those futures bets that other than the Circa actually lets you bet yes, no, will a team win the Super Bowl? But you can't bet no at most places. You can only bet yes, and I can tell you no book loses on those future books, on those future pools in division or for the Super Bowl. Just don't bet it. And that's why we're concentrating, this is what pros do, on the season win number, where you can go over.
All right, Steve, I hope I didn't lose you there. There we go. That's better. All right, we caught that. That was good advice not to tie up your money with bad odds, and certainly don't go to the strip and bet on some of those futures. They're just awful prices. The hold is 30, 35, 40%. It's just criminal what they're doing on the strip to bettors. Just don't touch that stuff. You're absolutely right. Moving on down. Go ahead, Steve.
You can go. I think it's Wizard of Odds is the website, and you can type in every single option, and they'll tell you what the household is. Wizard of Odds.
Wizard of Odds. Yeah, very good. I totally endorse them. They're excellent. Buffalo Bills. What a surprise team from 2019. Did it largely with defense. 9 wins. Could be a very interesting division. Some people arguably say that team may win this division. They may be the best team in the division with all the changes in New England now. What do you think on the 9-win total?
Yeah, I think it's about right. The number one question about the Bills is certainly not the defense. An elite defense, top 5 last year, should be top 5 this year. No significant changes. Josh Allen. What do you think about Josh Allen, and is he going to grow and develop? He's a below-average quarterback right now. The one trouble I have with Buffalo is last year, Buffalo beat one team that wound up with a winning record over the course of the season. I know they beat the Cowboys, impressive win. Cowboys go 8-8. The one team they beat was the Tennessee Titans. Well, they beat the Titans when Marcus Mariota was quarterback, and they won that game 14-7. So here's a team that really was not able to beat elite teams. If you're going to be a 10-win team, I know Buffalo won 10 last year, you're going to have to beat some winning teams along the way. Because of that, I could only lean under for Buffalo.
Yeah, one of the handicapping, I guess, chestnuts that if you've been in this business for a while, you remember is when a team has played a lot of close games and got lucky. This is particularly true for baseball and where there's a lot of games. And yet, if they win a lot of close games the previous season, that means they got lucky, frankly, in some of those games. And maybe it's better. Our turnovers was another factor. If they were very plus on the turnovers, that means, again, they were fortuitous on really a luck factor largely. And so I think Buffalo falls into that category. Moving on down to the Carolina Panthers from the NFC South, another team in major transition. I mean, all the way roster, certainly in the front office and in coaching. 5.5 is the projection for this team. Any reason to tempt fate and go over this 5.5?
No, and you nailed it. It's a COVID year, and the last thing I want to do is a team that completely transitions, has a brand new quarterback, brand new coaching staff, unproven coaching staff at that. I want no part of teams like that, especially early in the year. So I bet the Raiders -1 against Carolina week 1, and I would look under 5.5 for Carolina.
Under 5.5, expecting a really bad year in Charlotte, Fezzik, on the Carolina Panthers. Chicago Bears 8-8. Seems like they're always an 8-win team on the projection, and a few surprise years here or there. But obviously, quarterback a big question mark in Chicago. A lot of Chicago Bear fans that wanted to come on the show and are going to come on to a future show that I want to have you on when we talk about just the NFC North. which you're going to come back on in a week or so, Fez. But let's talk about the Bears and give us a tease here. Over or under 8 wins?
Like under 8 wins. The Bears fans hate me, and obviously I lived in Chicago for about 6 years, so I am a Bears fan. But that 12-4 was one of the most miraculous performances you will ever see. So I don't believe in Trubisky. I don't think Foles is going to be effective to start the year with COVID and the transition. Offensively, the weapons, they've got one running back, David Montgomery. He's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. He just got hurt this week. Tariq Cohen is what, 5'1"? All right, maybe he's a little taller than that. But they have no replacement for Montgomery to start the year. The Bears won 8 games last year. Why wouldn't they win 8 again? Well, they didn't really win 8 games last year because they went 3-0 in 3 games that have asterisks by them. They got to play Detroit twice with backup quarterbacks, David Blau, Driscoll. Both those games were really close. So the Bears they would have lost one, if not both of them, if Stafford was quarterbacking. And they certainly would have lost at Minnesota week 17, except for Mannion and his minions came in, and the spare Vikings played week 17. So the Bears were really 6-10 last year. That's a lie. They were not 8-8. And how is a 6-10 team suddenly going to win 9 games to beat you, especially without a running back to start the year? Bears, under 8 wins. Apologies to you square Bear fans. You'll still bet your Bears to win the Super Bowl, and you'll still lose.
Well, speaking of Bear fans being gluttons for punishment, I've been hammering the Cincinnati Bengals for years, thinking there's value, and I always get my ass handed to me. Now here they're 5.5. I used to go over 4.5, over 5, and they'd be 3-1 after 4 weeks. Then they'd lose 9 straight. I mean, here we go again. I'm not touching the Bengals at 5.5. But talk me into betting on the Bengals one way or another, Steve Fezzik.
Sure. Well, A.J. Green was out all of last year. The Bengals have had key injuries. Andy Dalton went out for 3 games, and Ryan Finley was atrocious, had like a QBR of like 28. NFL averages above 50. So the Bengals stats are all skewed worse than they really are. But even though I like Joe Burrow, how much practice time is he really going to have? You've got an organization full of losers. I just made fun of the Chicago Bears. Now they can make fun of me from Southern Ohio as a Bengal fan. Not with my money, not in that division. I'll pass.
All right. Don't like the Bengals. The Browns, another team from North Ohio, expected to be the surprise of darling last year. All of the accolades about the Browns were going to win the division. I think they were even projected at 8.5 or 9 wins and fell far short of that. It doesn't seem like people are learning from history. 8.5 is the projected total on the Cleveland Browns. Are the odds makers making another mistake here?
Yeah, let me take a look here. So their season wins 8.5. I believe they'd have to have a winning year for them to go over. Yes, that's correct. The last 12 years, if I add that up, no, hasn't happened. In 12 years, they haven't been a winning team. I get it. The roster is loaded. I get it. They got 2 great wide receivers. If Beckham is recovered from his hernia, Chubb is a great running back, and they've bolstered the offensive line. They got a first-round pick on the line, and they bring in Conklin, who's a very good lineman. I still got to see it. I got to see Baker Mayfield not roll out at the first sign of pressure and get himself sacked, not making commercials instead of working on the playbook, not looking at a defense that's completely lacking in discipline. 3rd head coach in 3 years. I will say this. Having a brand new head coach this year is a big disadvantage. This is the one team we got to put the asterisk by it, because Hugh Jackson and Freddie Kitchens were 2 of the worst coaches in the history of the NFL. So this is the one time having a rookie coach really isn't that much of a disadvantage. Myles Garrett was suspended for 6 games. I understand on paper the Browns should win 9 games. They got to prove it to me first. I look under.
Yeah, but they're overdue. 12 years, no playoffs. I mean, or no winning season. They're overdue. That's what we hear. Browns under, says Steve Fezzik. Dallas Cowboys, America's team, at least they used to be 25 years ago, and the last time they won a meaningful playoff game. Sorry, I had to do that. Cowboys 10 wins, a team that everyone is always looking at closely. Controversy always seems to surround this team. Finally, a coach, though, from the old Packers coach is now going to be on the sidelines. Maybe that'll have an impact. I don't know. Seems like they always have a pretty good regular season, then crash and burn in December. 10 wins. What do you say, Steve Fezzik?
10 looks right to me. I'm going to pass. In a nutshell, the Cowboys won 8 games last year. They should have won 10, though. You look at the stats, that offense was absolutely loaded. I have Dak rated very highly as a quarterback. That offense should be great this year with the rookie wide receiver. So now they got 3 with Lamb. Now they got 3 great options with Gallup, etc. I'm not a big fan of Dallas's new coach, but I didn't like Garrett at all, and I didn't like his play calling, his in-game decisions. But same's really true for McCarthy. Neutral on Dallas.
Okay. Before I get to the next team, I'd like to address something that's a lot of people have been asking about on some of the forums, and that's so-called home field advantage or crowd noise. Now, we don't really know the status of what spectators and the fan is going to be like for the 2020 NFL season. We don't know if they're going to let in, let's say 25% of the fans or no fans in some case. Jerry Jones is insisting they are going to have a lot of fans in his stadium. So now we get to here we are, the Denver Broncos, which has a decisive home advantage if you look historically. Same thing with Kansas City and Green Bay and some other teams, but particularly with the Broncos, you would think that if there's no fans or few fans in the stands, maybe that hurts them, the COVID restrictions. So I'd like you to address that as we talk about the Denver Broncos, who are projected at 8 wins in 2020.
Yeah, so the Broncos, I'm largely neutral on. As far as home field, some teams have a really good home field for reasons that don't involve the crowd. The Broncos because of altitude. The Miami Dolphins early in the year because of heat and humidity. The Green Bay Packers because they got that funky, slick grass that everyone is slipping on, and it's hard to get a pass rush if you're not used to it. Other teams get a big home field advantage because of the noise. New Orleans, Minnesota, and of course Seattle. So I see those 3 teams as being hurt the most because home field is worth about 2.5 points in the NFL. I'd argue 1.5 points of that is getting on a plane, being in a foreign city, and then the rest of it is special circumstances of the stadium like Green Bay or Denver, and the crowd noise. So I think the crowd noise is worth upwards of 2 extra points in Seattle and New Orleans and Minnesota. That's not going to be there in those venues. They're not going to have any fans in any of those venues opening week. Now, things may change over the course of the season. So I think you'll do very well betting against those teams at home. Teams like the Chargers that have no fans, this is great for them. They don't want any fans. In their own stadium, they get booed. And on the road, obviously, facing hostile crowds. So, I mean, the Broncos are still going to have a nice home field, but everyone is aware of that. And look at the Broncos historically. They've been so good week 1 at home, and the market is aware of this enough that a Bronco team that's supposed to win 7.5 to 8 games, they're hosting the Titans, who are supposed to be a winning team, and Denver's favored by 1.5. So the markets are aware of all this. I do think Drew Lock, 4-1 the Broncos were in his games. He had 4 solid games, 1 horrible game against Kansas City. Well, it was snowing in Kansas City in that game, and Kansas City D was playing much better in December. I'm going to give him a pass on that. I am pretty high on Drew Lock. I think he'll have a good year.
Excellent. The Detroit Lions, we talked a little bit about the Lions earlier, having a rash of injuries. Patrick seems to be a pretty good coach. I think he's got the nucleus of some talent there. We don't know Stafford's in his 10th or 11th season if he's going to stay healthy. It always seems to throw for a lot of yards when he's healthy, but the Lions never win. Projection there, kind of low on the Lions, it looks, at 6.5. What do you think, Fez?
Yeah, and money on the Lions, I've seen that go up to 7. I agree with the money. I like over on the Detroit Lions. Here's a team that was 3-4-1. Stafford's a clear-cut top 10 quarterback. And then Driscoll and Blau come in, and they're horrendous. We talk about close games. I believe Detroit was 3-8-1 in close games from memory. So if they just win half of their close games last year, and if they had been 6-10, this would be a slam dunk. We'd say, oh, they won 6 games last year with these 2 stiffs at quarterback. Surely with Stafford, they can get to 8. Stafford's wife obviously had the brain cancer, distractions last year as well. The first half of the year, Detroit over 7 wins, and me not liking the rest of that division at all, any of the teams, I could see Detroit. I'm not going to say this. Yeah, I'm going to say Detroit could win the division.
I can't wait to talk about that. Another teaser for those of you watching. We're going to be doing a show just on on all the divisions. We're going to have 8 shows coming up in the next week or two, including the NFC North. Fezzik's going to talk with me. And bingo, Don Rick is going to be on with He's from Chicago, a Bear fan. He's going to join you talking about the NFC North. So we're going to get more into this division here in the next week or so. Speaking of the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers projected at 9 wins. What a crazy division. This is going to be a really fun division to talk about. The Packers, probably the talent there with the Vikings, obviously, expected to win. Are you looking at a UFO, by the way, right now, Fezzik? What's going on there? Are you seeing a UFO?
I'm pulling up my quarterback ratings. I'm going to print my.
All right, I thought maybe you were going to be abducted by UFOs there. They look pretty. I was thinking we were going to have something that millions of people are going to watch. Let me tell you, if they take anybody, take Fezzik, take him away, please.
I'm pulling up all my files here, and I have my master file on the team. So,
the Frankenstein's castle there. Okay. Anyway, I didn't mean to put the pressure on you about the Packers. You have your books there? Okay.
I'm good. The Packers. So Aaron Rodgers. I'm the only guy in the world that has Aaron Rodgers not rated in the top 10. I mean, as the 11th best quarterback. Let me back that up. If you go to Next Gen Stats and you look at who's the most accurate passers in the NFL, the last 3 years, Aaron Rodgers is below average, meaning they evaluate, all right, this is how open my receiver is. I'm throwing to Lazard, and an average quarterback could complete that 65%, and Aaron Rodgers only completes it 63.5% of the time. So QBR rating, 20th and 16th the last 2 years. So Rodgers is overrated. The Packers are overrated. The Packers got outgained last year from the line of scrimmage. Every play they snapped, they gained 5.5 yards. Their opponents gained 5.7. So I've got a team that really should have only won 9 games last year. But guess what? Everyone knows about it. That's why the season win number is 9 on a team that won 13 last year. However, I do think that it's more likely that Aaron Rodgers is not going to respond well to Jordan Love getting drafted in the first round. The Packers traded up. The Packers desperately need a second wide receiver. And instead of taking a second wide receiver, they go ahead and give that opportunity away and take Jordan Love. And then they take a running back that can't catch the ball well in the second round. So because of that, I think the locker room may not be good for the Packers. I would only look under 9 wins.
I have to use my favorite Fez word. They're a fraud.
They're a fraud. I'm going to grab this printout. 1 second.
Okay, get the printout. I'll talk while you get the printout, okay? All right, so we're talking about the Houston Texans now. Oh, you have more stuff on the Packers, Fez? I know people are,
No. Well, we'll save that for NFC North.
We'll do that next week. All right, another tease for the viewers. Houston Texans playing in the AFC South. Clearly, the Jaguars are the bottom of that division, but the Colts and Titans are going to be certainly playoff contenders. Titans, that seems to be reflected because of the 2 other teams in this division being pretty solid expectation-wise in 2020. That seems to be reflected in what I think is a lower total than maybe we were expecting with the Texans. Only 7.5. I believe they were 9 last season. Why would they drop a game and a half on the Texans?
Yeah, well, the concern is that you lose Hopkins, your stud wide receiver. You still have Watson, a top 5 quarterback. If you have a top 5 quarterback, you should win 8 or more games. And the concern is Houston actually has good wide receivers right now. Will Fuller and Cooks. Cooks has had all these concussion problems. Will Fuller is made out of plexiglass. There's nothing behind these guys, QT and a bunch of stiffs. So if you can answer this question, can Houston's wide receivers stay healthy? If so, go over. If they can't, their defense is garbage, and they're going to have all kinds of trouble outscoring their opponents. Answer that question. You have your answer whether you're going to go or under. I'll pass.
All right, excellent. Speaking of that division, right up north to Indianapolis, it's a team I rode hard. The problem is I rode the train too long and it crashed off a cliff last season. I was with Brissett, the backup, and they were covering machine for about 6 or 7 games there. Then they just went off a cliff. Now they're projected, of course, with the change at quarterback, some improvement. Frank Reich certainly can coach. 9 wins. Maybe a little too high too soon for the Colts. What do you think?
Yeah, I wanted to go over with the Colts because last year they had 2 horrible losses with against, not horrible, but they should have won these games against Pittsburgh and then at home against the Dolphins. But Hoyer messed them both up. So the 2 games without Jacoby Brissett, they were awful with Hoyer. Brissett gets rushed back from his knee injury. He's not 100%. So I can make the case, hey, Indy is undervalued because they're upgraded at quarterback. But now the question is, have they upgraded at quarterback? Is Phillip Rivers, I was not impressed at all with what I saw from Rivers last year. He always kind of shot puts the ball, and his numbers were way down versus prior years. Now a brand new system. I get it. He's got this awesome O-line now. He still is throwing to T.Y. Hilton, who's on the wrong side of 30 and was injured last year. I don't know if he has the weapons to have an effective year. I'm going to lean under for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, interesting contrarian move. Speaking of contrarians, do you have the guts to bet over on this team? Projected to be maybe the NFL's worst team this season, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Seems like we say that every single year. 4.5, maybe a little too low. Maybe they sneak a few wins here or there, kind of like the Dolphins did. By the way, I think the Dolphins were 3.5 last year, something like that. And
yeah,
they were 0-8. Then they won, I think, 5 of their last 8 games, and they were a covering machine. Any chance in the contrarian play to go over on the Jaguars?
No, because I'm pretty convinced the Jaguars are going to trust the process and stick with Minshew, who should be very mediocre. And if you look at Minshew's numbers at the end of the year, mediocre's kind. He's going to be bad. And there's just not enough talent. This has always been a paycheck city, frankly, that free agents come to Jacksonville to get paid, not because they want to play there. I think Jacksonville wants the number 1 pick, and they're built for the future. If you had to play it, I'd play it under.
All right, now the Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, 11.5. We talked earlier about the home field advantage maybe being diminished, at least the factor of crowd noise. You always got to wonder also about a quarterback like Mahomes. In other words, a mobile quarterback, runs a lot. That I always keep thinking that he's one play away from that, hip injury or something like that. This team has been remarkably lucky to stay healthy the last 2 seasons. Maybe they get fat and happy coming into 2020. Maybe some reasons to bet under. What do you think, Fez?
I actually look over. He's already had the injury. So Mahomes already had the kneecap displacement. He already had the ankle get stomped on twice, and that's why they lost at home to Indy and to Houston early in the year. The Cheetah, when Tyreek Hill got injured, he was out 4 games, 5 if you count the game against the Chargers. He went out in quarter 1. That defense under Spagnuolo got so much better in the second half of the year. This Chiefs team is really good. And if you go back to that loss against Tennessee, I can't quite understand how the heck came up on special teams with a 98% chance to win. I would look over if you had to bet on the Chiefs.
I'm astounded that I've never seen anything like last season's playoffs. They fall behind 17-0 in the first game. I think 17-0 or 10-0 in the second game. Fell behind 10-0 in the Super Bowl. I mean, being down double digits in all 3 games, and then come back and covered, not only won, but covered all 3 games. What an explosive team, a fun team to watch. I keep thinking, the contrarian, the person that wants to go against the crowd, but I don't want to jump in front of that freight train at all. They just look too dangerous. We'll get to that on another show as well. Now I have trouble saying this. I've got to get my hands on my mouth to say this correctly. All right, what do you think about the I can't say it, Las Vegas? I want to say Oakland Raiders. It took me years to change over to the Los Angeles Raiders, if you remember that, and then back to Oakland. Now they're the Las Vegas Raiders. 7.5. So they're expecting just under a 5 season for the Raiders. Under. Tell us why, sir.
Got to go under with my hometown Raiders. Overrated Raiders. They managed to win 7 games last year. They got outscored by 100-plus points. So they won close games. And bottom line is the Raiders' defense was horrible. I'm a big fan of Carr. I like Carr. Their number 1 wide receiver, Williams, has a torn labrum. So all of a sudden you've got your third down possession receiver and a rookie being your top 2 wide receivers. Maybe their rookie running back from last year comes back healthier after getting injured last year. I love Waller at tight end, but the Raiders are only going to win if they outscore opponents and already being down effectively their number one wide receiver. No, thank you. And frankly, maybe COVID will help this, because I really think Las Vegas is a whole different city than any other city in the world. And I think it's a tremendous distraction to be in Las Vegas. I'm driving by the official hotel/casino of the Las Vegas Raiders. If you have a casino host, as your official hotel, you can see there being distractions in Vegas. Under for the Raiders.
I'm sorry, but I have to ask a follow-up. Now, you only got 30 seconds because we have time issues, which is my fault. But I have to ask you the obligatory question. That hasn't affected the NHL's Las Vegas Golden Knights. In fact, if anything, maybe it's a distraction to the opponents. You sure you want to stand by what you just said?
Yeah, absolutely, because especially in a COVID year, there's not going to be any distractions, Vegas distractions for teams coming in. They're going to fly in as late as possible on Saturday night. So it's not going to be like the NHL where my understanding is teams love to come to Vegas early and then they catch the Vegas flu, to spend an extra night in Vegas, oftentimes before the games.
All right. The Los Angeles, I have trouble again saying that. I want to say San Diego. It's going to take me years, man. The Los Angeles Chargers, you talked earlier about the home field, and that was the antithesis of the home field with the Chargers playing there in, I think, Carson in the soccer stadium, at least until the new facility opens in Inglewood. 8 is the total, even with the turnover in personnel, particularly at quarterback. Seems a little high. What do you think, Fez?
Yeah, well, the Chargers were one of the most unlucky teams in the league last year in terms of their schedule is much easier this year. They turned the ball over like crazy. And you talk about close games and underperforming. Not only did the Chargers lose close games, but they lost close games that they should have won. There was a game against the Titans that the Chargers scored the game-winning touchdown, not once, not twice, 3, may have been 4 times, at least 3. All of them called back by penalty or by review, and then they fumbled on the 1-yard line with 30 seconds left to lose the game. So there's a lot to like about the Chargers on paper. I also like the fact that there's no fans to start, or no appreciable fans, and like you said, that helps the Chargers because they have no fans. So they want the stadiums to be empty. That will help them. All that talent, especially defensively. I have to tell you, though, Coach Anthony Lynn and the game decisions that are made, I just can't trust the Chargers not to have another bad year and record in close games and get 50-yard pass interference penalties against teams like the Broncos on the second to last play of the game to cost them games. I'll pass Chargers.
One of the things that you never want to do when you're a sports gambler is to get emotional about teams, but the Rams are a team that I have just – this team seems soft. This team really melded in last season, and I don't know what in the hell happened to Wade Phillips' defense. This is a team that just 2 years ago was in the Super Bowl and won in New Orleans in the NFC Championship game, even though it was a horrible call, if you recall that. But no one expected the Rams to fall so quick, so fast, with so much talent. Now they're projected at 8.5 wins. Maybe an overreaction by odds makers in the public to what we saw last season, Fez?
I could only look under. There's too many losses defensively. This team is in salary cap hell because they paid Goff too much money. They paid Donald a ton of money. And it's okay. Donald's a great defender, but they lost too many guys on defense that they had to let go because of that. And the bottom line is they're still paying Gurley, even though he's playing for Atlanta. And that play action really set Goff up to be effective with the really good wide receivers that he had. So without the effective play action and unproven running back, I don't like Goff at all. I don't like the Rams. I could only lean under.
All right, the Miami Dolphins, 6. That was projected to be the worst team in the NFL last season, and they were a covering machine. I just love watching the Dolphins just rolling. I think they covered 6 out of their last 8 games after being 0-8. And, no one would have, seen that team improve, I guess, including a win at New England in the final game of the season for the Dolphins. Now, again, they're 6 wins, a little higher than usual. Maybe a reason to buy one way or the other. What do you think?
I would want to play over because I love Fitzmagic. I have him as my 15th rated quarterback. But here's the problem. We saw how bad Miami was with Rosen last year. And I think they're undervalued because of those games with Rosen. but we could get 2 of the last 7 games of the year. And I do want no part of the rookie quarterbacks, especially in a COVID year with limited prep time. So with that uncertainty, there's no way I'm playing the Dolphins over. They could start the year 3-4 and you're looking fine and then collapse.
All right, the Minnesota Vikings, we come back to the NFC North, which again we're going to be talking about next week. 9 wins for the Vikings. A lot of turnover on, I think, both the defensive and offensive coordinator are gone. Zimmer's obviously can coach. There's no question about that. Home field's now neutralized with little or no fans in Minnesota. 9 wins, maybe a little high. What do you think, Fez?
Yeah, I lean under. In Zimmer, I typically trust Zimmer since 2014. If you bet on him every game, you're 63% against the spread. So yeah. The word has gotten out on that, though. The last 2 years, 52%. So he has not been nearly as good. But you nailed it. The losses to the defense, the D-line, losing key players, Everson Griffin, losing 2 nose tackles, big losses at cornerback, Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes, Mackenzie Alexander, and with those not cluster injuries, but cluster losses at specific positions, I think that that's a big problem. Offensively, you lose Diggs, your best wide receiver. Thielen has really tailed off the last 2 years in the second half of the year, and you bring in Justin Jefferson, rookie. If he's not effective, now all of a sudden you've got a situation where you've got to question the offense. I think it all adds up, despite really good coaching, to looking under the 9 wins.
It's interesting. I learned a new term on this show just now. I've heard the term cluster injuries, which, if you have in the defensive secondary, you get 3 of them out. It's really hard to play pass defense. But I've not heard of cluster losses, and that's clearly affected the Vikings. Very interesting term. I got to remember that. That's good, Fez. The New England Patriots team that's been dominant for the last 2 decades. But man, now we're talking no Tom Brady, a lot of turnover on the team, but they still have arguably the best coach of all time. 9 wins. What do you think, Fez?
Yeah, so you lose Van Noy, you lose Hightower to opt out, you lose several other key defenders, and certainly you expect New England's not going to be as good, obviously. Now, a quarterback, I'm not so sure that this is a downgrade. Now, I get it. Brady probably is a better quarterback this year for New England than Cam because he knows the system and everything else. But Brady wasn't good last year. Brady was an average quarterback in terms of QBR, number 17, right in the middle of the league. If you look at Cam, who was awful last year, the 2 games he played, if you just look at his first 8 games in 2018, his stats were as good. They were actually slightly better than his MVP year. And then he got hurt against the Steelers, and he was done. And he played awful the second half of 2018. So Cam's only 31. If Cam can come in and be anything close to what he was, despite the losses on defense, you've got the genius going for you in Belichick. You've got guys that are not as good as the guys they lost, but are replacing starters with backups that have played for them before. I would certainly lean over at 8.5 for the Patriots.
All right. What about 9, by the way? 9, you don't touch it?
At 9, I think if you get plus $1.20, I would look over. I think that's your buy price. Plus $1.20 on that.
Okay. So another very popular team with an aging quarterback. At least he's still on the team, though. Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Some controversy in the offseason there. We talked about the home field already, maybe being neutralized in the Superdome. 10.5 is the projected win total for the Saints.
I have very little on the Saints. I think they're valued correctly. 10.5 is my number. I am completely neutral. I do think if there's going to be no fans all year long, I'd have to lean under because Saints obviously have one of the biggest crowd noise home field advantages.
Yeah. And the Saints are a notoriously slow-starting team, really, really poor in September. Look at their schedule here, and this looks like another spot where they could, conceivably start out 2-2, and then they'd have to basically go, 10-2, 12-2 the rest of the season, or whatever the number is to cover the number. There's something about I don't know if it's the heat or the distraction is in New Orleans in September, but it's a very slow-starting team. It tends to close well, but we'll move on to the New York Giants. Go ahead. You have one more point?
Yeah, Yeah, just one stat. That's a great point. Is that New Orleans is 2-10 straight up, 11 spread to start there. And think about this: they're 2-10 straight up, and they're oftentimes laying 7 to 10 points in these games. Almost an incredibly bad start to the year, the last 6 years.
Right. So the New York Giants, a lot of changes on this team as well. Projected at 6.5. What a wide open division that's going to be in the NFC East. That Giant team hasn't won in a long time now. Maybe they're due to get closer to 500. What do you think?
I don't think it's wide open at all. The Eagles are now down 2 starting linemen. Dallas, like I said, is going to win 10 games, and I don't like the Giants or the Redskins. Joe Judge comes in, unproven coach, same as Carolina. You've got you have Daniel Jones at quarterback, and second-year player that won't have any continuity with his coaching staff. I could only look under on the Giants.
The other team in the same stadium, the New York Jets. A lot of pressure on the Jets, and I've got a lot of Jet fan friends, and they just are always you go on Facebook and social media and watch their tweets and watch their Facebook page. It's comically it's comical to watch sometimes. I really feel bad for the Jet fans, but 7 wins, about where they always seem to be. That's a 6-10 team, a 7-9 win team every season. Any value there on the either side of 7?
Oh, I would look under big time. I think both the Jets and the Giants have a big problem. There are teams that were lousy last year, and now they have harder schedules this year than last. The way the schedules work in terms of strength of schedule, my numbers, by the way I evaluate based upon expectations versus their opponents this year, they're both up against it. The narrative is Darnold played very well last year. In the second half of the year, the Jets went 6-2. The truth is the defense played very well. Darnold never played well over the course of the season. Had a couple very good games, and I don't trust Darnold. I don't like the chemistry. I don't like the fact that you have ex-players just calling out Adam Gase as being an incompetent coach. Under for the Jets.
All right, we're getting into our final quarter now. 8 teams left to handicap here with Steve Fezzik. Fezzik here on Slapshot. It's brought to you by Pointspreads.ca. You can bet all these games, all of these totals, season win totals there at Spreads.ca. Please visit there and check it out. Action on everything, including a lot of props. Going into, we talked about the NFC East a few moments ago. I'm going to guess where you're going to go on this one. You just kind of tipped your hat off on the Philadelphia Eagles. Not a lot of respect for the Eagles, it sounds like, from what you said earlier. Projected at 9.5 wins. Jaded a little bit to the under already. What do you think, Steve?
I was all ready to be bullish on the Eagles this year, talking about how injured this team's been the last couple of years and talking about cluster injuries. Here's a team that just got absolutely decimated at receiver. They had guys off the practice squad that had to play. They got decimated in the secondary. Well, now they're decimated on their O-line with 2 starters down already for this year. It's too early in the year to already be having cluster injury situation. Because of that, I'd have to look under for the Eagles.
All right, under on the Eagles. The Steelers missed the playoffs last season. 9.5 wins. Seems about right to me. What do you think, Steve?
I think it's wrong, but I don't know which way it's wrong. If Big Ben is good, the Steelers
take a stand, sir.
If Big Ben has his 3 tendons that were repaired in his arm, if he doesn't turn into the Bionic Man and he's bad, obviously the Steelers aren't going to get Minka Fitzpatrick scoring defensive touchdown game after game to steal wins like they did last year, where they overachieved at 8-8. Because of that, specifically the win against the Indianapolis Colts stands out as just a crazy, fortunate win. So because of that, I don't know how good Big Ben's going to be. I got to pass.
San Francisco 49ers did it down the stretch, certainly with defense last season. This team at 10.5, it's very interesting to look at this division, a very tough division. Every team in this division could be a better than 500 team. I mean, at least on paper could be if things break right. But here we are. If you add up all the wins in the division, it doesn't make any sense here. The Super Bowl runner-up last season, the 49ers, let's also throw in the mix here that there's something called the Super Bowl loser letdown. Who teams from the previous season that lost Super Bowls tend to suffer some kind of at least a mental lapse, as we saw the Rams did last season. Is the same thing going to happen to the 49ers this season, projected at 10.5 wins?
I think you nailed it with that Super Bowl hangover. It seems more significant if you could have won the Super Bowl. So when it just gets taken away from you, I don't know if the Falcons have ever been the same, although they did play well, the year after, they lost to the Patriots. But the way the Rams, they were in that game for a long while, and that they lost their mojo completely. Goff did after losing that game. San Francisco was about 94% to win that Super Bowl on 3rd and 16 when Kansas City was down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Okay, that's what Kansas City does. But I love the overall squad of San Francisco, absolutely loaded. I love Jimmy G, but something is not right when you have the ball in key games in the playoffs and you hand it off late in the second quarter and just go into halftime instead of trying to score. So major concerns at quarterback, not having an elite quarterback and if you're 10.5, you better have an elite quarterback. I'll pass.
Yeah. All right, the Seattle Seahawks were staying in the same division, forecasted at 9 wins. That's a team I went under on last year and got crushed. Just on paper, I don't see how this team possibly, with all their losses from the previous year, they managed to be a playoff team. I'm not touching this one. Again, just a brutal division. But you've got Russell Wilson. I mean, just say no more. Seems to just have them in every single game. You can't take anything away from Pete Carroll as a coach either. 9 wins, Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm looking at my spreadsheet on Seattle, and they actually were outgained last year, similar to the Packers. That's pretty amazing that they could be in a position to almost gotten home field at 12 wins when they're being outgained on a yards per play basis. Turnover, they've been lucky the last 2 years, plus 15 and plus 12 last year. But one thing, their strength of schedule, despite playing that really tough division, much easier strength of schedule this year than last year. They have an average strength of schedule by my numbers. And you got to be careful. The one thing I've learned as a handicapper, you lose all these guys on defense, and it sounds devastating. Like New England, you're losing 4 guys, and you say, well, how much is Hightower worth? Is he worth 1/3 of a point? How much is Van Noy worth? Maybe he's worth a little more than half a point. How much is Chung worth? He's probably worth nothing. Replacement level. And so you add up these guys, and it's only like a 1.5 or 2-point adjustment typically. Whereas how much is Russell Wilson worth at quarterback? And I have Wilson, my number 2 rated quarterback. I have him rated 8 points better than Geno Smith. So you can see, as long as you have Russell Wilson out there and no one's blocking for him, it's okay because he'll find a way to convert the key 3rd downs. So because of that, at 9, do we really think Seattle's not going to be a winning team? I could only look over.
Very good. Talk about expectations being high. The next team on our list, Tampa Bay. Wow, what a off-season additions to this team, the overhaul of the organization from top to bottom. By the way, this is starting 2 seasons ago, but certainly with Tom Brady. Gronk is coming out of retirement, I guess, for be the first real game he's played in, a couple of seasons. Good coaching staff, it seems, there in Tampa as well. But maybe too fast, too soon at 9.5 wins with a 43-year-old quarterback?
Yeah, and so Vinny Testaverde won 2 games for, I believe, the Jets, and he's the only guy that's won starting a quarterback at age 43, all right? So Brady's got to win 10 to beat you now, and you could even get a 10 if you shop around. I can only look under. What stinks about this is Tampa Bay is massively underrated. So we had Jameis Winston with all those interceptions, and he finished the year off with flair, throwing a pick 6 against Atlanta in overtime to cost him yet another game. So here's Tampa, a team I'm ready to play over. The defense is gelling. Defense played very well, especially at the end of the year. The only reason Tampa only won 7 games is because Jameis turned the ball over so often. So I'm all psyched to play Tampa Bay over 8 wins for a really big bet. And now they pick up Brady, who I don't like at all, and I think is massively overrated. Now it's 9.5, and you nailed it. I think overreaction. If anything, I would go under.
Wow, that's a very interesting betting perspective, that one game, 8.5 to 9.5, could sway you to just jump the fence on clearly the other side. Really interesting analysis there, Steve. We'll keep an eye on that, obviously. The Tennessee Titans, great rushing team with Henry, a surprise team last season. By the way, an over machine. Everyone thinks running game, fairly good defense with the Titans, a lot of close games. That's good. That was an over machine last season. By the way, I mean the game totals. Now speaking of the win totals, 8.5. Boy, no respect at all for the Titans. Why is that total so low?
You tell me. I'm not sure. I had the Titans rated at a 10-win team. So remember, last year they started out with Mariota. He's awful. They're 2-4. So they bring in Tannehill. They go 7-3, and I think that's a much better prediction or a representative of how good that team was, and certainly better in the playoffs. You go 2-1 at New England, at Kansas City, and at Baltimore. So that's just beyond impressive. I do think Tannehill, I know in some metrics was number 1, yards per attempt and the like, but he's a guy who's been a journeyman his entire career with Miami. Nothing special. So I'm not willing to expect him to still be in the top 10, but certainly in top 15. So if Derrick Henry can have a good year, Titans should be able to win 10 games. My problem is the extra carries. 300 carries during the regular season, over 80 carries in the playoffs for Derrick Henry. When a running back gets to 400 carries, typically you see a huge regression, if not an injury. Ask yourself, is Derrick Henry going to be healthy the entire year? If so, this is a huge bet to go over. They don't have a good backup running back at all. So it's really upon Derrick Henry who sets up the play action for Tannehill. Tennessee's defense is just average. They're going to have to do it on offense. And can Henry stay healthy?
All right, and we saved the dregs for last. The Washington football team, as they're now known, the former Washington Redskins, the second lowest projected win total on the entire card of 32 teams, Jacksonville being the lowest at 4.5. I'm seeing Washington football team 5 and 5.5 in some places as well. Boy, would you want to touch this team right now, Fez?
Sure, if I could get a quarterback, if by some miracle Alex Smith somehow winds up being able to limp out there instead of Haskins, and I can have a decent quarterback, and I'm not saying that that's going to happen. You've got to be concerned about Rivera with his health issues right now. How committed is he going to be able to be to this team? I'm not a big believer in Haskins. I do love McLaren, their Ohio State wide receiver in his second year. He was a huge, pleasant surprise. He should have a really big year. Prop betting probably go over 1,000 yards for him this year. I think it's a little bit lower than that. But in terms of the Redskins, I'd lean over at 5 just because I think that their attitude is going to be better. And here's another Charger-type team. They get no support from their home crowd. So if there is no crowd, great. Now the Eagles fans aren't going to take over a stadium, and we don't get, all the crowd noise on the road. I'll lean over to a team, but I'm not going to play it over on a team whose quarterback I really don't like in Haskins.
Yeah, and also another intangible. Talk about just so many moving parts right now with the Redskins. Rivera diagnosed with cancer, I think about 5 or 6 days ago. Now it's treatable, and he's still going to coach. And kind of like Frank Reich, I think he took the season off, if you recall, with the Colts. 3 seasons ago, and the Colts rallied behind the coach, so to speak, in many ways. Now, Rivera's a brand new coach for the Redskins, so I don't know how his players are going to react to that. But again, it just really throws another level of uncertainty into the mix. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great point and especially, if you're having this health scare and your cancer treatment and you're traveling with COVID and the like and all the meetings that you have to do. I watched Hard Knocks. I don't think I'll watch it again because I didn't learn anything. But the one thing I learned from the one episode I saw, it was all seemingly about COVID prevention and the headaches and the logistic problems of that. And if I'm an older coach, maybe not that old, Rivera isn't old, but still with a pre-existing condition like this, what a challenge to have to go ahead and be in your first year with new players that you're coaching.
All right, great stuff, Fez. I knew you'd be great, and a lot of good information there. I've learned a few things. I hope the viewers and listeners have also picked up some things. Let me again remind everyone that we will be doing every single division, all 8 divisions. We'll be breaking them down in a little more detail. And on future shows, I'm going to have 2 guests. Fezzik's going to join me on a future show, the NFC North. But I'm going to have 2 guests. In other words, we'll have 3 people in the booth, sometimes a 4th if I can arrange it. And we're going to talk about, all the teams and really get into some depth here. So go back to Pointspreads.ca. Please keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on my page at Facebook. And now, Fez, I'll tell you, you've been around for years. You go on every single show that I see regarding football. You need to follow Fez on Twitter, certainly. Anywhere else you can get in touch with Fez and follow his information. He's very, very accessible to the public, very, very helpful, and very, very knowledgeable. Fez, how can they reach you? How can they follow you?
Yeah, at Fezzik Sports is my Twitter. There are guys pretending
Spell
to
out
be
Fezzik, okay, for you, Steve?
Yeah,
spell out Fezzik, please.
At Fezzik Sports on Twitter. And if my picks are available at pregame.com, lots of great content at pregame.com. If you see me and I'm not on pregame.com or at Fezzik Sports, that's not me. That's someone pretending to be me.
You do have imposters, don't you? You've got people that I've seen that. That's pretty remarkable. I mean, that's success, man. When you have people impersonating you.
Yeah, I guess the good news is that the guy pretending to be me got hot for a couple months ago.
The guy who was impersonating you got hot. I just love that. That's great. Wow. Can I get his account, please? Great way to end the show, Fezzik, on a sense of humor, a high note. Again, thank you for coming on the show. Really terrific. Hope those of you who watched had some fun, learned a few things. I'm Nolan Dalla with Slapshot, brought to you by Pointspreads.ca. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.